Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all having a good day so far. So in this session, we're going to talk about what really happens in the first 90 days when onboarding an M&M into the business. The reality is that there's a real broad spectrum in how people feel about M&M. I'm sure there's a lot of you that are genuinely excited and have jumped headfirst at the opportunity, but there's also a group of marketers that feel a lot more apprehensive about it. And that mostly comes down to concerns around the complexities that just come with building a model, right? Sourcing and cleaning all the data, getting all the stakeholders along for the ride, and managing everyone internally. And also just that natural hesitation that comes with doing something that is very new and very different to how you may have been operating in the business for a long period of time. So we wanted to have a really honest and candid conversation about what really happens in that kind of first initial stages of bringing an M&M into the business, the things that work well, the things that are maybe a bit challenging, and also talk about the big payoff moments. So to do that, I'm joined by three marketers who have recently gone through that experience themselves. So I want to start at right at the beginning when M&M stopped being a concept and became reality in the business. So maybe, Katherine, I'll start with you. When you decided to bring M&M into the freedom business, what were your expectations going in, and how did that compare to the realities once you got started?
Yeah, so for us as a business, it was really about unifying that single source of truth for our channel performance, and really working through how, as a business, our channels were performing from an ROI perspective, so that we could then make those concise decisions on what are the channels that we move forward with and which are the ones that we could remove or use less. We also work across two different agencies. So we have a performance-led agency as well as a above-the-line agency. So, and they're managed by two different teams within the business as well. So it was also about how do we unify our activity as a business to ensure that we were looking at the one reporting and the one goals, so that we could make those decisions together. And
when you got started, did you think this is going to be hectic? It's going to be so much work to get this done. Was that actually the reality for you, or did things go a lot smoother than what you thought?
A lot smoother than I thought. To be honest, I thought there would be a lot of drain on resources to really get it get it going. But the onboarding team really helped manage that across all of our agencies, as well as our data team. So they really took a lot of the work off myself, who I thought would probably have to wear a lot of that, and really helped bring everyone along for the journey. So it was really great.
And I want to ask a bit about that a bit later on what actually drove, because that obviously it also comes down to the culture that you have as a business. But I know for a lot of people that have M&M or that will go into M&M in the future, that experience isn't always the case. So Terri, I also want to ask you, because I know maybe your experience wasn't as smooth. So, you know, what were the challenges that you experienced, or things that maybe were a bit simpler than what you expected?
Yeah, I'm probably the pin-up version of what not to do, because it was chaos in our business. And that was definitely my fault. It was not Mutinex's fault or anyone else's fault. I think our agency came to us and said, look, we think you know, an M&M would be good for your business based on your media spend and the challenge you're under with leads and competition. We heard earlier, like the 71 brands in the market. We're undergoing a 100-year transformation in auto, where we've got this tsunami of Chinese brands coming at us, and you know, Honda was iconic back in the day, but we're invisible currently. So we were having all these discussions about brand versus retail versus channel mix, and should we do this and that, and there was just no sort of real science behind it. So selling it in was probably the easiest part. You know, anything that's going to drive cost efficiencies and you know, help us forecast better and plan better, etc. That was the easy part. So going to the board to say, I'm going to go and spend this money and this is what it's going to do, was an easy conversation. But some of the challenges we faced were, you know, I think it was easy. The data integration was pretty easy for all the data points that the agency managed. But when it came to all the data points internally, that's when things started becoming a bit unstuck. And that was, partly because we had so many different data sources, and it started uncovering a few quality issues of the data sources. Also, just it was all coming from different departments, and it just wasn't well coordinated. So that was probably a bit of a challenge. And the other piece was just around how we built the model and what it was actually modelled to. There was a big conversation around, well, is it a sales outcome or is it a lead outcome? Because for us, we're a lead generation business. All of our marketing activity is all around driving leads, but not every lead's equal, right? So there's good quality leads and bad quality leads and long-term leads and short-term leads, and they all convert at different ways. And so there was just sort of a lot of, I think, conversations and things that we had to kind of solve for on the fly that we probably didn't plan for in a more coordinated way.
Was getting alignment with the different stakeholders that were involved in the project tricky as well? I know you said it was easy to sell the project in, but what about wrangling everyone to get things done?
Yeah, so in hindsight, I would have managed this much better. I think, we got it signed off and it was good to go, and I delegated it to the team to kind of implement, but we should have managed it like any other project. We should have sat down, we should have had a kick-off session, we should have had timelines, we should have had a stakeholder engagement piece. We should have explained what the purpose of M&M was to people that were broader than the marketing team, to really get the buy-in as to what value this was going to be bringing into the business, because it's not just benefiting marketing. There's so many aspects of the M&M that can help with, our forecasting or, our pricing structures, etc. So that stakeholder engagement piece was overlooked, and I think just the ongoing management. And as a result, it took us forever to kind of get it off the ground because we just hadn't properly planned for it. It was just something that, I had someone in my team walking over to the sales team going, hey, we need to ingest all this lead information into this thing. And they're like, well, what? I'm busy today, so I don't have time to help you with that. And so it was just not a coordinated project within the business, and it absolutely should have been.
Yeah. Kashi, so you have experience with M&M, so this is not your first M&M rodeo. You've done it in your career. How did that experience compare, like the second time versus the first one? Obviously, you're working with Mutinex, so it's amazing, I assume. But but what was the reality for you of working with Mutinex, but also just doing M&M for the second time?
So we probably had a different experience to Terri. I had a CEO who's sending emails going like, have you looked at these guys? Have you looked at this? Have you done that? Have you investigated this? Very focused on putting in a Triple M platform. I'd argue and say I was probably the holdout, partly because I'd gone through it before. We don't need to name them, but archaic, slow, historic, and just was a nightmare. That first, it just, the once bitten, twice shy is probably there. It was a lot harder to onboard, a lot slower, became a mountainous project that just went wrong, that just what was supposed to take 3 months took 12 months. And so you kind of sit with that yourself and go, don't want to do this, don't want to go through that pain again. It wasn't. It genuinely really wasn't. Like, I really want to do call out, shout out AJ, and if anyone hasn't had him as your onboarding manager, phenomenal. Just onto us all the time, chased us consistently. Like, we were a little bit of a bottleneck here and there, grabbing some really old historic data for us. We'd gone through a really big transition. So anyone doesn't know, it's Lendi Group, but that means it's Aussie Home Loans and Lendi Home Loans as two different brands. And so we'd gone through a really big transition where Lendi had amalgamated and joined with the Aussie brand, and we went through a bunch of different things of changing media partners and doing all of that to get to a point where getting that historic data became difficult, but not impossible. Again, Mutinex actually helped out great, worked out ways to go around it and get what we needed to do. But genuinely, like, a lot of buy-in, a lot of interest internally, a lot of belief. We're in an organization that is heavily commercially minded. Numbers matter, and it's the right thing to do. It just simply, I'd argue and say I was probably a little bit of the holdout. I knew I had to do it at some point, but there was probably just a bit of me that was just like, oh, I don't want to do that again.
Totally fair. I guess going back, Katherine, to what you were saying, just to give advice to people who either have MMM and that might have a second experience sometime in the future, or that don't have an MMM and are thinking about it. What can they learn about your experience? Because obviously you said that the onboarding experience at Mutinex was great, but I think culturally you also had a great dynamic between the marketing team, the data team, the leadership team. How did you create that culture? How can everyone learn from the Freedom business?
I think for us, we ran an RFP, so we had Trinity P3 help us run that, and they were really great in helping guide us to find the right partner, but it was also about having the right people in our business on board from the beginning. So we had our CEO, somebody from our data team, our head of data and intelligence, as well as our GM of marketing and GM of digital, and myself, all involved with the RFP. So everybody was really on board. They understood their roles and then what we needed to deliver as a business. So the data team knew and was able to then brief their team on what was required. But also our agencies were really on board. So at the time we were with Bohemia and Incubator, and they were both on board with what they needed to deliver and understand that we needed to provide that historical data. So they were all ready. So I think that really helped, that everyone was really briefed ahead of time to provide what was required.
Was it key as well did you have a specific project lead that was responsible for leading all the other teams in the business?
So that was me leading it from a Freedom perspective. Just getting everybody on board.
So it came down to you, basically.
Partly.
Terri, for you, so you've been very honest about your experience, which is amazing because that's the reality of what it entails. You said that internal stakeholder alignment is everything. And you already spoke about this a bit, but if you could go back and define the ideal setup, now you've gone through that now, what would that look like? How would you define that structure?
Yeah, I think it's really important, even at top leadership level, that there is a good understanding within the business of the power of what this tool is and how it can help inform business decisions. I think we'd been given advice by our agency, thank you Chris Howitson if he's still here, to onboard this tool, and we were just looking at it as another marketing tool, but it's much bigger than that. And what I would have done, with the beauty of hindsight, is that I would have, from top level down, done an education and stakeholder engagement piece about what this tool actually was and the value that it could bring to the business, and got everyone bought into it at a very early stage. Because what I'm trying to do now is, now we've got the tool and it's showing us some pretty telling information beyond just our marketing mix and channel mix, but also around some of our pricing, and some of it's quite confronting information. So I'm now, trying to present this information back to stakeholders going, we've got an issue here. Like, all the marketing efforts are being offset by the fact that our pricing is wrong. And those conversations are really challenging and are confronting for a lot of people in the business. And so then people are like, oh, well, where's this data from, and how did you get to that point? And then they want to start unpacking and interrogating everything, and it's really hard to try and have those conversations after the fact and educate people after the fact. So I very early on would have brought from a top senior leadership level down, people engaged in the whole process and what the purpose of this tool was going to deliver back to our business early on.
So it seems like it's really critical to engage stakeholders before the project is live or launched. So when you're presenting the result, they're not like, oh, where does actually this come from? So engaging everyone up front is really critical to ensure that everyone's on the same page after the results go live. Kashi, for you, again, going back to the fact that you are an experienced MMM person, seems like you're an advocate for it, right? Like, it's something that you obviously believe in. If you had to tell marketers in the room that don't have that experience, why would you say it's absolutely worth doing?
I'm one of those, like, we all hear the term, like, you can't improve what you don't measure. I'm going to go with, there's another one that I don't think gets said often enough, which is money follows metrics. We're all marketers, like, and anyone in the room, creative is the fun part, like picking and adding in a few extra zeros to a media buy, adding a few extra zeros to a Facebook campaign. None of that really drives the activity. It's not the fun part, it's not the good part, it's not the bit that really matters, right? It's the hard work that really matters. Proving that hard work for most marketers is really difficult. Proving that hard work when the world is moving towards, and has done for a long time, last click attribution. And it becomes addictive for a lot of people. It becomes a lot addictive for a lot of people that just care about pure numbers and spent this, got that, without seeing necessarily the numbers and the metrics that go around it. Using a M&M platform it empowers most marketers with data. I don't believe it's the only source. I am a big believer in that you should be using 3 or 4 different sources of data and using them to give yourself a bit of a triangulation of where you should be pointing and what you should be doing. But the more data that you have and the more input that you have into that decision, the better. You go from making decisions around media, around things like, I think this is a good idea. I mean, I'll shout out Oodle here, and quite honestly, they're probably the best media partner I've worked with, in the sense of we launched and we were doing media buys and building out a big brand awareness play for Aussie over this last year before we had a M&M in place. We did really well. They did really well. But that gets you to a point, and you can go from 0 to like 80, 0 to 85 pretty damn well with a good partner behind you and good instincts and good knowledge. But you're never going to get to 90, 95, 100. You're just not. You need the tools in place. You need the measurements in place to get there. Mutinex gives us that. It gives us it in a time frame that is not like archaic platforms. I mean, I didn't really touch on it before, but there are options out there, right? Where it's like they collect data for 3 months, then go model it, and then you get the information 6 months afterwards. And so you're looking nearly 9 months or 12 months back going like, oh, this is great. Like, it's pointless. In the world that we live in today, it's just not, it's not what we need. We're now making decisions and we're informing our media by, and we run a hybrid model. Like, we do a lot of our direct media partnerships, but we then work with Oodle to actually go and work through that in a hybrid model that is phenomenal for us. It makes us nimble, it makes us faster market, it makes decisions around the media choices quick. But before Mutinex, it's still like, there's gut, there's a bit of an opinion, there's a bit of vibe in there. Like, I think that's good. Now we know. And it's informed our decisions. We're now about 3 months in, and we are making much more informed decisions. Our most recent media plan, and we're looking at a 12-month laydown now as well, is based off of this information. And, you know, we're empowering our partners to help us make better decisions. We're doing it internally, and the team's making better decisions for it. We're just in a much more, I don't know, let's call it a more insightful and a more educated place to make decisions. It's not de-risked. It's not riskless. There's still options there that still can go wrong. You can still have shit creative, and all the best media buy in the world is going to be bad, right? Like, but it definitely helps a long way.
And some of that, Kashi, has been the fact that you've been able to switch from very pure performance focus to more brand building, thanks to, I guess, M&M. Very new to Mutinex, but that's something that you've been able to do since onboarding? We have. We've actually gone through, for anyone that cares about brand metrics, right? Like, there's many that can move and move relatively well. Unprompted awareness is it's the one I herald, right? It's the one that's the hardest to move. It's the one that's the slowest to move. It's the one that's the most expensive to move. We've gone up 5 basis points in the last year, in less than 12 months. And so our prompted went up, our consideration has gone up. The Aussie brand went from what I would argue and say was relatively dormant and heritage and loved for a long period, but somewhat forgotten because we weren't in market, to the last nearly 18 months now under stewardship of Emily Lonsdale, like our GM, and just a whole commercial minded and a focus on those numbers. I'll call out Brian this morning. He was right. Like, marketers should be across P&L, but we should also be across unit economics.
like that is where the real unlock comes. Like it's fine to make profit, it's fine to make revenue, it's fine to make money out of those decisions. But the moment you get down to the fact of, in his world, like this bottle of beer will make me this, or I know that this home loan will do this for our brokers and this type of broker in this type of environment, you make so much better decisions.
Yep. Katherine, kind of similar to that, I think one of the big values that you've gotten from M&M already is that it's validated the power of brand, specifically TV, and doing fewer, bigger, better. How's that also, what value have you seen from the back of that, those insights?
Yeah, so as a business, we came to the conclusion about 5 years ago that screens was the backbone of our business from a channel perspective, and that we really needed to double down on that channel. And we saw great results off the back of really focusing in. The last couple of years, we've probably taken our focus away from that a little bit, and we've let some other channels come in, and we've really broadened our mix, and we've seen that our baseline sales have started to decline off the back of that. So really having the reporting and the data behind us to show the power of TV for us as a brand, it's really allowed us to really focus back in on that channel and really put the money where it needs to go, and really look at those other channels that are not quite performing as much for us, to really stop investing in them, and invest in the ones that are really delivering for us.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's just really amplified our gut feel and allowed us to have the numbers to back
To
up.
prove it. And Terri, I think different for you is a little bit different, because one of the things, one of the value points that you get from, or all marketers get from M&M, is the fact that you can see not just the contribution of media, but one of the things that you've been able to see in the Honda model is the contribution of pricing, contribution of externals, contribution of product. Has that allowed you to have different types of conversations internally in the business, and that you weren't able to have before you had the results?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a constant battle on every Monday morning about leads versus conversion versus whatever, and it's that, well, the marketing's not working, well, your offer's no good, well, your pricing's no good, there's something wrong with the product. So it's the 4 Ps really. So there is insight in the platform that is helping us have those conversations. Like, we can see that we're driving loads of people to the website, but they're not submitting a lead. So what is wrong? Is there something wrong with the product? Is there something wrong with the price? Is there something wrong? So, rather than us just all being in a room sort of trying to argue it out, like, we actually now have some data and insight to be able to help inform those discussions in a scientific way. So, absolutely. And also, it's helping with our forecasting as well. So, we can see, like, based on what we're spending in our channel mix, etc. The sales planning team who are sitting there trying to forecast, okay, what are we going to sell? What's the mix? What's whatever. We've now got an input to help inform that decision, rather than it being them sort of working in isolation. So. Like I said before, the tool is helping to support the business much more broadly than just the marketing space.
Amazing. So listening to the 3 of you today, I think there's a key theme or key themes are emerging, and it's, I think, something that I want to leave everyone with today. So the first 90 days when you build a model isn't about just building a model. It's about really building the confidence with your teams and your stakeholders, and about also treating it not as a measurement project, but about shifting the business on how you think, you plan, and you're going to make decisions moving forward. We spoke at the beginning, it can be quite daunting to, just dive into the world of M&M. But I think what we've heard is that once you get past those initial stages of the onboarding process, you actually get a lot of value from it. And the biggest value you get is clarity. Clarity in how you're going to make growth decisions, where to invest and where to stop spending your time, basically. And that clarity is also going to drive conviction. I think everyone said in this morning, but when you've got the data and the facts to prove it, it gives marketers a louder voice internally. And that's going to allow you to have conversations that may used to be subjective and maybe more political, into conversations that are going to be grounded in insights, facts, and evidence. And so you can back brand when everyone's pushing for short-term wins, or to also just back bolder decisions because you know that you're going to have the data to back those decisions. So I want to say a massive thank you to Kashi, Terri, and Katherine for joining us on the panel and sharing advice. And really hope that you go away with all the advice and the confidence to jump into your M&M world and give us a call. No, it's a joke. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.